I'm going to be talking about GitLab, Terraform, and AWS, and I made this slide set specifically for this. So, lovely picture at the bottom. Now, generally, I'm a lover of doing less. Like, the less I can actually do and still deliver the same, or deliver more, that's ideal for me. I don't know who else likes doing less. Exactly. I mean, this is the perfect scenario for me. And so we're generally choosing tools that can give us things that are doing, speed, security, manageability, that kind of thing that really starts to mean that we have to do less. There's two things I want you to take away today, hopefully. One thing is that, what an attractive guy I am. The second thing is that we don't really or fully see or understand the compromises that people before us have had to make. So that's the big thing I'd like you to take forward into 2 years' time when you're sitting there with someone who has done something now and you don't like it. Or you're frustrated because what was that guy doing? You don't understand the compromises that they've had to make to get the job done. And the other thing is GitLab is great, yeah. So overall, we're aiming to deliver speed, security, and manageability both now and in the future with all of the decisions we're making. And we're making decisions all the time. It isn't I made a decision this week. We're making decisions with every line of code we're writing, with every server we turn on, with every service that we choose to use, we've made a decision. And that is not a decision that comes lightly over time. And so making the right decisions early is actually pretty much what experience gives you. You may not, hopefully you write better code over time, but your experience should mean that you start to make more of the right decisions, or at least be able to analyze why you're making them. That's me. I think it still looks quite like me. That was about 2 years ago, so I looked less tired then because I didn't have a 2-year-old living with me who I woke up at 5 this morning because, Daddy, I'm waking up now. The worst thing I've done recently is put a light in her room, and she comes in, knocks on the door at 9 at night, and I'm like, Violet, what are you doing? I'm waking up now. I'm going swimmings. No, you're not. I am. I've got my swimming costume on. You've got 3 swimming costumes on. Brilliant. Go back to bed. 5 o'clock. I'm waking up now. Daddy, I'm going swimmings. No, we're not going swimmings. Let's watch Frozen. So, yeah, I'm a DevOps consultant at HeliCloud, so they do IT consultancy and kind of cloud stuff. I'm also, a GitLab hero, which is kind of like the GitLab community person, and I kind of do talks about it. And I'm also helping run the London GitLab meetup that's about to start. I'm a Docker community leader. I mainly do work for HashiCorp as an implementation engineer, so going and doing things for that. I'm also a dad that I mentioned and a guitarist. I've got 16 guitars. I probably don't have enough hobbies, but I play rugby and cricket. I'm also married. Who guessed, right? And generally, I do kind of DevOps solutions. You can read these words. They are what are on kind of a marketing slide. So hopefully today, this is what you're going to expect. That we're going to look at some integration points between GitLab, Terraform, and AWS. You're going to see a project. You're going to see how that project's configured, and then we're actually going to run it into AWS with a demo. And that should be completed by, I think, about 8 minutes past 8. I'll just play the demo even quicker, and that'll complete in 1 minute if needs be. So hopefully, in terms of a show of hands, people heard of GitLab? That's pretty good. That's like everyone. It's different to GitHub, right? Because that's like the defining line in tech. If you know there's a difference between them, then you've probably heard of them. So their kind of concept is that it's a DevOps platform. And the really big thing I want people to think about today is the 2 items that I've got bullet pointed at the bottom, that it's one interface and one permission model. And that's really what I think the optimal thing for what they're delivering at the moment is. Because what you're getting is lots and lots of things. You can look through these and pick out things that are most relevant to you, but they're all coming in the same package. So I work as a consultant, and I sometimes go to places and they have 5 different issue tracking things. And you think, oh, how does anyone ever work on this? And that might mean that they've got 4 or 5 different SaaS solutions. You're building a website. You probably don't need all these things. But this is what we kind of use to just overwhelm us with GitLab values. My assumption is that people know what Terraform is. If you don't know what Terraform is, you're going to know what Terraform is, because at the moment it's like it's about what Docker containers were about 5 years ago, when people were like, half the people knew what they were, and now everyone assumes Docker containers are containers, right? You should kind of, this is a request to get a resource. It went off.
This is not the phone.
In many ways, I think of Terraform as being a structured API connection. And the reason I say that is that AWS, for me, when I talk to people about AWS, I'm kind of dropping the infrastructure as a service thing. I don't think it's really infrastructure as a service anymore. And I don't really think people want infrastructure as a service. For me, I couldn't think of anything more boring as infrastructure as a service. That sounds like, don't you love being in a data center? That's where I'd spend my holidays if I could. So what I actually think is that AWS is an API to request resources, storage, and services. So that's what you're doing. You're getting these items from AWS via an API. And when you kind of jump to that concept, that it's an extension of your software delivery, and your software is only existing for a purpose, so you get an infrastructure because you want these things. You're not doing it because, you are really, really keen on cabling switches or something. There's an end purpose for what you're doing. And something that I really am passionate about is the fact that when we're building solutions for people, that there is only one project. The marketing team and the software developers and the ops guys are pretty much, it's one project. You're not working on something different, and the more you can break down those silos between each other. We've been talking about DevOps for quite a while now, and we still have people who think they do ops inside a team that's totally separate to what's being deployed in software, as if they don't even care what's happening. And their whole purpose for being is to work together. This is the bigger business solution of what you're providing. It's not to just have a server at a specific time. It's that we have a reason for having that server, and we're deploying software onto it, and there's a reason that other people are trying to drive people to services and use those services and improve those services. So we are one team and we are one project, unless you manage multiple projects, right? Okay, so I've put together a really small little project that hopefully illustrates that idea. It's got, a Lambda, it's got an IAM role, it's got an API gateway, and it's using a GitLab CI pipeline to deliver that. I'm going to make this public later when I delete some of the stuff, so you can't see all of the workings. You just see the perfect answer at the end, right? So I might even fork it and make myself a new one that's like, look, guys, first time, every time. Okay, inside this we have, people get the idea of pipelines in CI. So there's a dev pipeline in it and a release pipeline in it, but they are not separate. They are inside one pipeline that's on conditional things. So you'll see that the release pipeline looks very, very similar because it is the same one. It's just the release one actually goes a lot further because it's running exclusively on tags. And we have the idea in that we're packaging up a release so that we can put it to an S3 bucket, and I'm also making a container inside there, and the kind of things you'll see that we've got a plan, an apply, and a destroy, because that's the Terraform lifecycle. And we've got some linting on the front because I wanted to show that, I I used to be a software developer. So in our linting, I've got a load of linting, but that's mainly because pretty much every time I submit something, it has something wrong with it. So it means that I can uphold the quality of the things we're running. If anyone's never seen kind of GitLab CI working, it's YAML. It's like other CI platforms that also use YAML, Circle CI or Drone or a bit like Travis. It's the same kind of concept. You can see we've got structure behind it. And you don't really need to focus on that. What we're trying to deliver is the idea that we've got a pipeline that all of these software solution is passing through. So we've got linting. We've got testing. So in this, I'm mainly only testing Terraform. But I'm using a validate stage in it. And I'm also using TerraTest. So I could use TerraTest to deploy into a separate AWS account and then destroy it after and just test the API of what we're doing. And that's just another little thing that you can do. We've got a package one. So for this release, I'm building a container for the head of whatever branch I commit. I'm also, if it's got a tag, I want a container with that tag being made. And if it's got a tag, I'm expecting to release this, therefore I'm zipping it up and moving it to an S3 bucket that I'm going to later deploy using that tag number. Hopefully that's explicit in top to bottom what it's doing. There is a plan, and you can see that I'm now passing a variable into my Terraform. If you've used much Terraform, you'd understand that we can pass variables into it. And you'll see that there's a CI commit tag, and that's because that's the tag I'm releasing under it. And what it's doing, it's passing that variable to my Terraform to say, this is the version from the bucket that I want to release. What does that mean? What you're also seeing is that we've got an artifact that we're storing. So I'm storing it in GitLab. Probably for production stuff, you might want to move it to an S3 bucket. But you could also have an artifact that you keep forever inside here. And anyone can go and look at this plan and show what this plan was intending to do. And if you were to move more complex things, you might want to have to keep rerunning these plans if you had contention on the actual Terraform in between when you plan it and when you actually release it. So there's an apply, which basically pulls the artifact back out, applies it to AWS, and then there's a destroy stage. I've been talking to a lot of people about infrastructure life cycles with Terraform, and I think that you're making a mistake if you don't expect that you're going to destroy it, because unfortunately for everyone here who hasn't thought about it, every piece of infrastructure you use won't be being used in 10 years, probably 5 years, depending on how you're operating, the next 3 months. So don't get tied into your infrastructure. The solution is bigger. Okay, so now we hope that the demo works. Oh my goodness, the demo definitely works. Okay, so what you see here, this is just a really simple Lambda function, right? So I've changed what we're doing, and then going to do a commit. You can see that there's a commit happening. I've tagged this release, so that it actually will go as a release. And then I'm going to push it up to GitLab. You see, I've even managed to pre-record spelling mistakes as I go along to make it look more real. And if I stand here, it looks like we're in a film, right? Oh my God, this guy's really quick around his computer on double speed. I had to do it in double speed because it took 7 minutes. And I was like, is there anything worse than waiting for CI to complete? Come on, it's been 3 seconds. Okay, so here we can see the pipeline in action. Some of these things are already complete, some are not. We've moved on to validating it. We're now gonna, how do I move this? Oh, you see I've clicked on one of the items to see it's not actually been triggered yet. We can see that these things are being built in a Docker container. So every different stage of that pipeline is in a Docker container. So the one we're looking at here is the actual package one that's going to zip up the code that we have inside the project and move that to an S3 bucket. So these are all the versions that you won't see previously. 0.0 ones didn't work. And you can see up at the bottom, we've got this thing where we've uploaded hello zip to 0.1.3. So we've also got in that, we've got a container release. So I'm using a base container called Lambda, which is kind of like a Lambda operational thing that you could use. It's a Docker container that acts like a Lambda. So you can kind of simulate part of what having that Lambda would be. This is the GitLab interface, and you can see, I've made a whole bunch of these containers as we go along, and I've actually made some for the head of branches. I'd recommend that you keep pruning them out. This is a really good way of doing demos, and I'm doing this for all my demos in the future. So what we're doing now, we're running a plan. Because it was on this release branch, we're actually going to run a plan for deploying this Terraform with the variable. Here we go. We're making our plan. We can see that we've put in our variable inside there. It's outputted it to a plan. I could download that plan and look at it if I wanted, but I can see on here that there's one thing that's due to change, and that's going to be that the new release comes out, and that will trigger a couple of other things. Okay, I've set this as a manual function to apply. My normal recommendation is do manual when you start, look at going automated after like 2 or 3 months of things haven't gone wrong manual, because it's very easy to then delete stuff when you didn't want to. So you can see from here that we're now applying our Terraform. What you'd also see is I've done nothing with AWS. All I've done is configure this to have access to AWS ADY. And that was it. So we then got to our new API endpoint to view the Lambda. Okay. So hopefully people are relatively comfortable with what happened. This was the project. I don't know how easy this is for people to see, but so in here I just made a simple, this is the Lambda function, and then this is the Terraform. If you were going to use it more, make this into a module, initiate the module inside one Terraform file. Now you have an extensible way of deploying all of your serverless functions in exactly the same way and getting exactly the same outputs. So, there's things for controlling the back end where I'm using Terraform Cloud, because you should all buy Terraform Cloud. If you pay for having it deployed by implementation services, I could be visiting an office near you. And wouldn't that be good just for the jokes? No, it probably wouldn't. Okay. So overall, what have we learned today? Basically, we've learned that I do a really good demo. Thank you very much. The real takeaways for it is that GitLab gives you the ability to manage relatively complex software delivery in a hands-off operation. I'm doing, basically that we're doing GitOps, but I'm not using a whole series of tools. The only thing I've really used is I've used GitLab CI, and I've pulled a load of containers to run inside it, running Terraform, connecting to AWS. So I've not made anything particularly challenging, I don't think, and it's something that your team is now operating as one team. Your Lambda people could be, deploying it to a separate package and passing that package over to the ops team to do it, but I don't see a reason in a single project why you would need to do that. We can see that Terraform's integrating nicely with GitLab and AWS. There's a Terraform provider for GitLab. So you could actually write Terraform to deploy this project onto GitLab and then make a change, and it would deploy that, so you would have more of a hands-off operation. And the kind of overall thing of this is that we haven't had to manage shared loads of products or services, and we haven't had to deal with other methods of delivery or interfaces. Like, there's been one way of doing it, because in my opinion, less is far more. And therefore, it makes me like the Marie Kondo of DevOps. I said one recently, I was a DevOps influencer as well, which I might be putting on my LinkedIn. I'm still kind of wary about putting that because it does make me look like a bit of not swearing. I've got a GitLab meeting running next week if people want to go to it. And, you know, there's HashiCorp meetings and reInvents next week. So AWS will obviously extend their vast range of services to 3 million. And there'll be some that die off silently in the night.